This episode of 1988, the year animation broke, has less of a theme. These films are pretty unconnected, but they were all released in 1988, so I guess that's sort of a theme. But I do think these three are major technical feats of filmmaking that got people more interested in their chosen medium of animation. And they're also really great movies. What these three say about what animation can achieve by reaching these highs must have felt impossible even while they were doing it, making the films themselves more monumental when you consider the context of their release. These are amazing, one-of-a-kind films that would have been so no matter when they were released, and no matter what context they'd be released in. But what they did to culture and the perception of animation, they all recontextualized and redefined animation for the next generation of animators, audiences, and fans. This is 1988, the year animation broke. I remember the first time I saw Akira. It was playing on the Sci-Fi Channel one night really late. I was in middle school and had to set my VCR to record it. Then, when I got up for school the next morning, I had to see that it worked, just in case. I set it up, rewinded it, and started the movie. Again, I just had to make sure. I had only seen clips and whatever ads Sci-Fi Channel had for Akira.
The Sci-Fi Channel presents the American television premiere of Akira.
But I was incredibly hyped. I watched the opening bike chase, and when I heard the guy's arm snap, that was the shock and awe that woke me the fuck up. Also, it was like 6 in the morning. Akira started out as a manga created by Katsuhiro Otomo in 1982 and was serialized in Young Magazine, a weekly anthology magazine for teenagers. Right from the beginning, it was critically acclaimed, winning the Kodosa Manga Award in 1984, and its first collection became a #1 bestseller in Japan. There was interest in making the popular and critically acclaimed manga into a movie, which Otomo was apprehensive about making because of a previous experience, but was assured full creative control over this one, despite him having very little prior animation experience. Akira was an expensive and amazingly well-animated film. Typically, films at the time used more limited animation. This was the era of OVAs in Japan, but Akira had full, fluid animation, which was an expensive proposition and unprecedented at the time. They would actually animate on 1s and 2s, which, since films are usually 24 frames per second, that would mean for every second of screen time there would need to be 24 or 12 different drawings. If you multiply that by the runtime, that's like a lot of drawings. This was Disney quality animation, and in fact, better than Disney was really doing at the time. Usually no one animates on 1s and 2s because it's very time consuming and also it's insanely expensive. So they needed 10 million or 1.1 billion yen to make this film. So if you've ever wondered why everything can't be animated just like Akira, it's because adjusted for inflation, it's probably as expensive as fuck. To make this budget happen, the Akira Committee was formed. The committee consisted of 7 different companies, who all forwarded money and promotion towards the film. Japan's economy was booming at the time, and these companies had money to burn on anime. Totally just like you when you were 14 when you got paid for that part-time job. Akira is an animation masterpiece, and was a huge hit when it was theatrically released in Japan on July 16th, 1988. For the Western world, it would become the de facto best anime. The masterpiece film that you had to see, and really, how can you not be impressed with the animation, the action, the overstuffed story, and the visuals? Akira is an amazing film, but it's also an experience. Trying to figure out what it means while being in awe of the bright lights of Neo-Tokyo, a dystopian future that feels like it could explode at any moment. Its unnerved, intense nature brought the English-speaking world in and became the classic anime, pseudo-intellectual sci-fi that no one thought animation could do, but were damned impressed that it did. I can't imagine what it was like to see Akira in 1988 on the big screen for the first time. That frankly sounds amazing. To be encompassed so fully by the power of that film. Like most of the English-speaking world, I saw it on TV through the significantly less powerful VHS and actually recorded off TV and EP, so However, Akira could not be contained, and even your crappy TV and whatever bad recording you had of it could not hold back the glory of this film. Akira is a movie that continues to surprise, confuse, and amaze me. It's the big, dense animation masterpiece that either demands you take the medium seriously or get the fuck out. The next movie is what was probably your cool crush's favorite movie in art school. Alice opened in America on August 3rd, 1988, and probably is one of the best adaptations of a fairy tale ever produced for the screen. Director John Schwankenmeyer always held Alice in Wonderland in high regard, and said the story had followed him since childhood. After having the confidence to make a feature stop-motion animated film after completing his 2 shorts, The Jabberwocky and Down to the Cellar, John Schwankenmeyer knew the previous versions of Alice in Wonderland had presented it as a fairy tale when he felt that Lewis Carroll's source material was written to be like a dream. This makes the version of Alice probably the more interesting version cinematically, using a combination of live action and stop motion with creepy-looking taxidermied animals. Alice was so far out there, it doesn't feel like the same story the way you've seen it before. It's a film that understands how to be creative with an adaptation, almost like what's done with Shakespeare on the stage. The radical departure with this adaptation would later influence countless other stop-motion animators. Also, the creativity in adapting something so faithfully, but also playing with the juxtaposition of the previous versions to make something new and original. Alice is probably, if anything, one of the most original ways I've seen someone take with an adaptation, especially with a fairy tale, almost making it something wholly new and original. 1988 was a banner year for animation, with some of the greatest animated films of all time being released, but often the film that gets the credit for this sea change is probably the one with the least amount of animation, or the one that's not just totally animated or whatever. As I've stated before in this video, the 1980s weren't really a great time for animation, especially for a theatrical film, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit got the public to believe in animation again, and if you do count it as an animated film, it would be the highest grossing one of the entire decade. The thrill of seeing all your favorite characters again on the big screen, and even the added event of seeing Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse share the screen together, Roger Rabbit had a lot going for it, but really it was more than just that. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a technical achievement, and what Richard Williams did with the animation is nothing short of amazing. He actually chose the harder way to make this film, making sure the characters moved naturally with the lighting and the camera movements. Before, when mixing live action and animation, the camera was always still, to be easier for the animators, but Richard Williams wasn't interested in that. The bumping of the lamp scene being the most iconic, but it's truly amazing how naturally he got live action and animation to work in the same space. And the bumping the lamp thing is awesome. I mean, sure, if you were really in that situation, the light moving like that for that long would be like super annoying. You'd probably stop it before like talking for so long, but it's still amazing, and how well the film flows despite all the technical aspects is really awe-inspiring and just an amazing feat in itself. But other than being a monumental motion picture, Roger Rabbit served a major purpose in 1988 with animation. It got people excited for animation and reminded audiences what they loved about it, audiences that had forgotten about animation in general. But it also closed the book on the previous era as a kind of victory lap to the iconic characters and world of animation from before. A year later would be The Little Mermaid and the start of the Disney Renaissance. Watching Roger Rabbit again, I'm struck by how much I fall in love with it over again. Not just with the movie, but with the world it lives in. And the world it lives in is the world of animation. You get classic characters and references that everyone knows, from Acme to Roger being a Tex Avery-like character, to Donald and Daffy playing piano together, to Betty Boop, to Dumbo, to Fantasia, to just more than you can even count. It reminds you of the joys and the fun of this world. It's hard to watch Roger Rabbit without respecting the medium itself. The animation by Richard Williams shows a love for the medium, and where the animation takes you pours through this film in a way that's infectious. Robert Zemeckis directs this one with so much detail, it's no wonder you had an older audience brought back to a medium that they had ignored, and a younger audience wanting to go through it again and again. This is a peak for both filmmakers in such a way that it's magic, and the kind of magic that makes you believe in the power of movies and the amazing world of animation. Next time, on the conclusion of 1988, the year animation broke, we look at what was going on in TV and non-feature animation in 1988, with The Simpsons shorts and DuckTales, Ralph Bakshi's ambitious and controversial Mighty Mouse cartoon, as well as one of Pixar's history-making shorts. See you next time.